Hello, and welcome back to another video, and another episode in the Flatland series. In this video, I'll be reading chapter 4 and onwards, so we'll be continuing on. So, I'm gonna start. 4. Concerning the woman. If our highly pointed triangles of the soldier class are formidable, it may be readily inferred that far more formidable are our women. For if a soldier is a wedge, a woman is a needle, being, so to speak, all point, at least at the two extremities. Add to this the power of making herself practically invisible at will, and you will perceive that the female in Flatland is a creature by no means to be trifled with. But here, perhaps, some of my younger readers may ask how a woman in Flatland can make herself invisible. This ought, I think, to be apparent without any explanation. However, a few words will make it clear to the most unreflecting. Place a needle on the table, then with your eye on the level of the table, look at it sideways and you will see the whole length of it. But look at it endways, and you will see nothing but a point. It has practically become invisible. Just so it is with one of our women. When her side is turned towards us, we see her as a straight line. When the end containing her eye or mouth, for with us the two organs are identical, is the part that meets our eye, then we see nothing but a highly lustrous point. But when the back is present to our view, then, being only sublustrous, and indeed almost as dim as an inanimate object, her hinder extremities serves her as a kind of invisible cap, the dangers of which we are exposed to from our women must now be manifest to the meanest capacity in Spaceland. If even the angle of a respectable triangle in the middle class is not without dangers, if to run against the working man involves a gash, if a collision with an officer of the military class necessitates a serious wound, if a mere touch from the vertex of a private soldier brings with it danger of death, what can it be to run against a woman except absolute and immediate destruction? And when a woman is invisible, or visible only as a dim sublustrous point, how difficult must it be, even for the most cautious, always to avoid collision? Many are the enactments made at different times in different states of Flatland in order to minimize this peril. And in the southern and less temperate climates where the force of gravitation is greater and the human beings more liable to casual and involuntary motions, the laws concerning women are naturally much more stringent. But a general view of the code may be obtained from the following summary. Every house shall have one entrance in the eastern side for the use of females only, by which all females shall enter in a becoming and respectful manner, and not by the men's or western door. No female shall walk in any public place without continually keeping up her peace cry under penalty of death. Any female duly certified to be suffering from St. Virtue's dance, fits, chronic cold accompanied by violent sneezing, or any disease necessitating voluntary motions, shall be instantly destroyed. In some states there is an additional law forbidding females under penalty of death, that was allowed, from walking or standing in any public place, without moving their backs constantly from right to left, as so to indicate their presence to anyone behind them. Others oblige a woman when travelling to be followed by one of her sons or servants, or by her husband, Others confine women altogether to their houses except during the religious festivals. But it has been found by the wisest of our circles or statesmen that the multiplication of restrictions on females tends not only to the debilitation and diminution of the race, but also to the increase of domestic murders, to such an extent that the state loses more than it gains by a too prohibitive code. From whenever the temper of a woman is thus exasperated by confinement at home, or hampering regulations abroad, they are apt to vent their spleen among their husbands and children, and in the less temperate climates, the whole male population of the village has been sometimes destroyed in 1 or 2 hours of simultaneous female outbreak. Hence the 3 laws mentioned above suffice for the better regulated states, and may be accepted as a rough exemplification of our female code. After all, our principal safeguard is found, not in legislation, but in the interests of women themselves, for, although they inflict instant death by a retrograde movement, yet unless they can at once disengage their stinging extremities from the struggling body of their victim, their own frail bodies are liable to be shattered. The power of fashion is also on our side. I pointed out that in some less civilized states, no female is suffered to stand in any public place without swaying her back from right to left. This practice has been universal among ladies of any pretensions to breeding in all well-governed states. As far back as the memory of figures can reach, it is considered a disgrace to any state that legislation should have to enforce what ought to be, and is in every respectable female, a natural instinct. The rhythmical and, if I may say so, well-modulated undulation of the back in Our Ladies of the Circular rank is envied and imitated by the wife of the common equilateral, who can achieve nothing beyond a mere monotonous swinging, like the ticking of a pendulum, and with the regular tick of the equilateral. It is no less admired and copied by the wife of the progressive and aspiring isosceles. In females of whose family no back motion of any kind has become as yet a necessity of life, hence in every female of position and consideration, back motion is as prevalent as time itself, and the husbands and sons of these households enjoy immunity at least from invisible attacks. Not that it must be for a moment supposed that our women are destitute of affection, but unfortunately the passion of the moment predominates in the frail sex over every other consideration. This is of course a necessity arising from the unfortunate conformation, for as they have no pretensions to an angle, being inferior in this respect to the very lowest of isosceles, they are consequently wholly devoid of brain power, and have neither reflection, judgment, nor forethought, and hardly any memory. Hence, in their fits of fury, they remember no claims and recognise no distinctions. I've actually known a case where a woman has exterminated her whole household, and half an hour afterwards, when her rage was over and the fragments swept away, has asked what has become of her husband and her children. Obviously, then, a woman is not to be irritated as long as she is in a position where she can turn round. When you have them in their apartments, which are constructed with a view of denying them that power, you can say and do what you like, for they are wholly impotent for mischief, and will not remember a few minutes hence the incident for which they may be at this moment threatening you with death. What a long sentence. Nor the promises which you may have found it necessary to make in order to pacify their fury. On the whole, we get on pretty smoothly in our domestic relations, except in the lower strata of the military classes. There, the want of tact and discretion on the part of the husband produces at times indescribable disasters, relying too much on the offensive weapons of their acute angles, instead of the defensive organs of good sense and sensible stimulations. These reckless creatures too often neglect the pre-described construction of the woman's apartments, or irritate their wives by ill-advised expressions out of doors, which they refuse immediately to retract. Moreover, a blunt and stolid regard for the literal truth indisposes them to make those lavish promises by which the more judicious circle can in a moment pacify his consort. The result is massacre, not, however, without its advantage, as it eliminates the more brutal and troublesome of the isosceles, and by many of our circles the destructiveness of the thinner sex is regarded as one among the many providential arrangements for suppressing redundant population and nipping revolution in the bud. Yet even in our best regulated and most approximately circular families, I cannot say that the ideal family life is so high as with you in Spaceland. There is peace insofar as there is absence of slaughter, may be called that name. But there is necessarily little harmony of taste or pursuits, and the cautious wisdom of the circles has ensured the safety at the cost of domestic comfort. In every circular or polygonal household, it has become habit from time immemorial. I'm so horrible at reading, it's unbelievable. And now has become a kind of instinct among the women of a high class, that the mothers and daughters should constantly keep their eyes and mouths towards her husband and his male friends, and for a lady in a family of distinction to point her back upon her husband would be regarded as a kind of portent involving loss of status. But as I shall soon show probably, this custom, though it has the advantage of safety, is not without its disadvantages. In the house of the working man or respectable tradesman, where the wife is allowed to turn her back upon her husband while pursuing her household avocations, there are at least intervals of quiet, when the wife is neither seen nor heard, except for the humming sound of their continuous peace cry. But in homes of the upper classes there are too often no peace. There the voluble mouth and bright penetrating eyes are ever directed towards the master of the household, and light itself is not more persistent than the stream of feminine discourse. The tact and skill which suffice to avert a woman's sting are unequal to the task of stopping a woman's mouth, and as the wife has absolutely nothing to say, and absolutely no constraint of wit, sense, or conscience to prevent her from saying it, not a few cynics have been found to aver the way they prefer the danger of death-dealing but inaudible sting to the safe sonorousness of a woman's other end. To my readers in Spaceland, the condition of our women may seem truly deplorable. It does seem a bit and so indeed it is. A male of the lowest type of the isosceles may look forward to some improvements of his angle, and the ultimate evolution of the whole of his degraded caste, but no woman can entertain such hopes for her sex. Once a woman, always a woman, is a decree of nature, and the very laws of evolution seem suspended in her disfavour. Yet at least we can admire the wise prearrangement which has ordained that, as they have no hopes, so they shall have no memories to recall, and no forethought to anticipate the miseries and humiliations which are at once a necessity of their existence and the basis of the constitution of Flatland. Oh God, this is mildly falling apart. I might have to hold this down like that. Chapter 5 of Part 1 of our methods in recognizing one another. You who are blessed with shade as well as light, you who are gifted with 2 eyes, endowed with a knowledge of perspective, and charmed with the enjoyment of various colours, you who can actually see an angle and contemplate the complete circumference of a circle in the happy region of 3 dimensions. How shall I make it clear to you? These pages stuck together. How may I make it clear to you the extreme difficulty with which we in Flatland experience in recognising one another's configuration? Recall what I told you above. All beings in Flatland are animate or inanimate, no matter their form, present to our view the same, or nearly the same, appearance, viz., that of a straight line. How, then, can one be distinguished from another where all appear the same? The answer is threefold. The first means of recognition is the sense of the answer hearing, which with us is far more highly developed than with you, and which enables us not only to distinguish by the voice our personal friends, but even to discriminate between different classes, at least so as far to concern the 3 lowest orders: equilateral, the square, and the pentagon. For of the isosceles I take no account. But as we ascend in social scale, the process of discriminating and being discriminated by hearing increases in difficulty, partly because the voices are assimilated, partly because the faculty of voice discrimination is a plebeian virtue, not much developed among the aristocracy. And whenever there is any danger of imposture, we cannot trust this method. Among our lowest orders, the vocal organs are developed to a degree more than correspondent with those of hearing, so that an isosceles can easily feign the voice of a polygon, and, with some training, that of a circle himself. A second method is therefore more commonly resorted to. Feeling is, among our women and the lower classes, about our upper classes I shall speak presently. The principal test of recognition, at all events between strangers, and when the question is not as to the individual, but as to the class, what therefore introduction is among higher classes in Spaceland. That the process of feeling is with us. Permit me to ask you to feel and be felt by my friend Mr. So-and-so is still among the more old-fashioned of our country gentlemen in districts remote from towns, the customary formula for a flatland introduction. But in the towns and among the business, the words "be felt by" are admitted, and the sentence is abbreviated to "let me ask you to feel Mr. So-and-so." Although it is assumed, of course, that feeling is to be reciprocal. Among our still more modern and dashing young gentlemen, who are extremely adverse to superfluous effort and supremely indifferent to the purity of their native language, the formula is still further curtailed by the use of "to feel," in a technical sense, meaning to recommend for the purpose of feeling and being felt. At this moment, the slang of polite or fast society in the upper class sanctions such as barbarism, as Mr. Smith permit me to feel Mr. Jones. Let not my reader, however, suppose that feeling is with us the tedious process that it would be with you, or that we find it necessary to feel right around the sides of every individual before we determine the class to which he belongs. Long practice and training begun in schools and continued in the experience of daily life enable us to discriminate at once by the sense of touch between the angles of an equal-sided triangle, square, pentagon, and I need not say the brainless vertex of an acute-angled isosceles is obvious to the dullest touch. It is, therefore, not necessary, as a rule, to do more than feel a single angle of an individual. And this, once ascertained, tells us the class of the person whom we are addressing, unless indeed he belongs to even higher section of nobility. There the difficulty is much greater. Even a master of arts in our University of Wentbridge has been known to confuse a 10-sided with a 12-sided polygon, and there is hardly a doctor of science in or out of that famous university who could pretend to decide promptly and unhesitatingly between a 20-sided and a 24-sided member of the aristocracy. Those of my readers who recall the extracts I gave them from the legislative code concerning women will readily perceive that the process of introduction by contact requires some care and discretion, otherwise the angles might inflict on the unwary feeler irreparable injury. It is essential for the safety of the feeler that the felt should stand perfectly still. A start, a fidgety shifting of their position, yes, even a violent sneeze has been known to prove fatal to the incautious, and to nip in the bud many a promising friendship. Especially is this true among the lower class of triangle. With them, the eye is situated so far from their vertex of the lower class triangles. That they can scarcely take cognizance to what goes on at the extremity of their frame. They are, moreover, of a rough course of nature, not sensitive to the delicate touch of the highly organized polygon. What wonder, then, if an involuntary toss of the head has here now deprived the statue of a valuable life. I have heard that my excellent grandfather, one of the least irregular of his unhappy isosceles class, who indeed obtained shortly before he deceased 4 out of the 7 votes of the Sanitary and Social Board for passing him into the class of equal-sided, often deplored with a tear in his venerable eye a miscarriage of this kind, which had occurred to his great-great-great-grandfather, a respectable working man, with an angle or brain of 59.30 degrees. According to his account, my unfortunate ancestor, being afflicted with rheumatism, and in the act of being felt by a polygon, by one sudden start accidentally transfixed the great man through the diagonal, thereby, partly in consequence of his long imprisonment and degradation, and partly because of the moral shock which pervaded the whole of my ancestors' relations, threw back our family a degree and a half in their ascent towards better things. The result was, in the next generation, the family brain was registered at only 58 degrees. Not till the lapse of 5 generations was the lost ground recovered, the full 60 attained, and the ascent from the isosceles finally achieved. And all this series of calamities from one little accident in the process of feeling. At this point, I think I could hear some of my better educated readers exclaim, "How could you in Flatland know anything about angles and degrees or minutes? We can see an angle because we recognize the region of space. We can see an angle because we, in the region of space, can see 2 straight lines inclined to one another. But you, who can see nothing but one straight line at a time, or at all events only a number of bits of straight lines, all in one straight line, how can you even discern any angle, and much less register angles of different size?" I answer that though we cannot see angles, we can infer them, and this with great precision. Our sense of touch, stimulated by the necessity and developed by long training, enables us to distinguish angles far more accurately than your sense of sight. When unaided by a rule or measure of angles, nor must I omit to explain that we have great natural helps. It is with us a law of nature that the brain of the isosceles class shall begin at half a degree, or 30 minutes, and shall increase, if it increases at all, by half a degree every generation, until the goal of 60 is reached, when the condition of serfdom is quitted, and the freeman enters the class of regulars. Consequently, nature herself supplies us with an ascending scale or alphabet of angles for half a degree up to 60, specimens of which are placed in every elementary school throughout the land. Owing to occasional retrogressions, to still more frequent moral and intellectual stagnation, and to the extraordinary fecundity. Okay, I don't know what that means. Okay. Comment down below if you know what that means. Fecundity of the criminals and vagabond classes. There is always a vast superfluity of individuals of the half degree and single degree class, and a fair abundance of specimens up to 10 degrees. These are absolutely destitute of civil rights, and a great number of them, not having even intelligence enough for the purpose of warfare, are devoted to the state to serve of education, fettered immovably as so to remove all possibility of danger, they are placed in classrooms of our infant schools, and there they are utilised by the Board of Education for the purpose of imparting to the offspring of the middle class that tact and intelligence of which these wretched creatures themselves are utterly devoid. In some states, the specimens are occasionally fed and suffered to exist for several years, but in more temperate and better regulated regions, it is found in the long run more advantageous for the educational interests of the young to dispense with food and renew the specimens every month, which is about the average duration of the foodless existence of the criminal class. In the cheaper schools, what is gained by the longer existence of the specimen is lost, partly in the expenditure for food, and partly in the diminished accuracy of the angles, which are impaired after a few weeks of constant feeding. Nor must we forget to add, in enumerating the advantages of the more expensive system, and that it tends, though slightly yet perceivably, to the diminution of the redundant isosceles population, and an object which every statesman in Flatland constantly keeps in view. On the whole, therefore, although I am not ignorant that in many popularly elected school boards there is a reaction in favour of the cheap system, as it is called, I am myself disposed to think that this is one of the many cases in which expense is the truest economy. But I must not allow questions of school board politics to divert me from my subject. Enough has been said. I trust to shew that recognition by feeling is not so tedious or indecisive a process as might have been supposed, and it is obviously more trustworthy than recognition by hearing. Still there remains, as has been pointed out above, the objection that this method is not without danger. For this reason many in the middle and lower classes, and all without exception in the polygonal and circular orders, prefer a third method, the description of which shall be reserved for the next section, which will be part of the next video. I'm gonna stop here, and we're gonna call it an end after reading chapter 4 and 5. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope my reading ability, or at least my ability to read the weird sentences from 1880, is not too annoying, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you for watching, and sleep well, stay relaxed.